Hi folks, thanks for joining me again today. For those new to my channel, my name's Andy Tysh and I'm a photographer with over 40 years experience. Now today I'm going to do what I call a bird in flight panic button. The idea of this panic button is that you're not prepared in any way, shape or form, and all of a sudden you see an epic eagle or a bird or something like that you're hoping to capture. The bird is in flight, and generally when this happens you've just been shooting in manual mode and your settings are totally wrong, and by the time you get around to changing them the bird's long gone. Well, I'm here to help you solve this problem with the bird in flight panic button. Let's have a look and let's see what this does. Alright, so the idea of this panic button is to give you an instant flick of a switch that will have your camera set up and ready to go to capture a bird in flight. Now this is especially useful if you've come out of a dark area or you've been shooting something that is so far away from birds in flight that your settings are going to take too long to adjust and the bird is long gone. So what we're going to do is set up one of our custom buttons on the top of the camera, which is user button free because that's closest to our manual button. And we're going to put a series of settings into that user button. That means all you've got to do is flick straight across and you're straight in that bird of flight mode, and you've got every chance of capturing that bird in flight. Alright, so what I'm going to do is let's just talk about the settings first, and then I'll do a couple of screenshots and a talk through on the back of the camera so you can see exactly what needs to be done on the Nikon Z cameras to get this panic button to work. Now this will work on any camera that you can just have a series of settings put into a custom function button or a user button, and that'll help you get in the ballpark to capture some birds in flight. Alright, so we'll do a quick talk through about the settings and why I use them, and then I'll show you how I do them on the Nikon Z6 in with a bit of a screenshot on the back. So for shutter speed, and we're going to set this all up in manual mode. So for shutter speed, it's controlled by the command dial on the back. I want that for myself to be around about 1/3200th of a second. Now for me that's a good compromise. You could go slower than that if the bird's further away, faster if the bird is closer, but I wouldn't go, super fast, because then you're going to start bringing in noise and it's going to defeat the purpose of this button. But 1/3200th of a second for me on the shutter speed. Aperture. With this lens, I'm quite happy to run this wide open. So at 600mm, this is running at f6.3. No drama for me with that, so I have the aperture set wide open. Now, the secret sauce in this panic button is the ISO sensitivity. We're going to set that to auto. Now when I tab across to the screenshots here you'll see how that's done, but we put a cap on how high we want that auto sensitivity to go. For me it's ISO 8000. I can work with that in my editing. I'm comfortable with that, no drama. Now everyone has different editing software. Different editing software handles noise differently, so everyone's going to have a different idea of what they're comfortable with on their camera in terms of noise. So that'll be a personal preference, but for me ISO 8000 on the Nikon Z6 is what I'm comfortable with, so I set that in the auto ISO sensitivity as the maximum sensitivity that I want to go to. Now the next thing we're going to talk about, autofocus mode. which I want in continuous. And if you're going to do this panic button, put your camera in continuous autofocus mode, because the bird's going to be on the move. It may get closer, may get further away. Now, next, our autofocus area. We want this to be as big as possible. Because the bird's on the move, you want a nice big area to get that bird in and have the focus weave its magic. So I go wide area, large autofocus. Alright, so there's a quick summary of what I'm going to set on the camera in manual mode. The reason I do it in manual mode is because it's nice and easy to do, and then I can put the settings into a user setting, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute when we go across to the screenshots of the camera. And it's just nice and easy to do it in manual. Copy it across to your user free, and then you've got a panic button ready to go. Let's have a look at this setup on the back of the camera. I may be repeating myself a couple of times from what I've just said, but hopefully it helps you get these settings right, and hopefully it helps you capture a few more birds in flight. Alright, so the first part of this panic button setup, and arguably the most important, is that we want our ISO sensitivity to be automatic. So what we do is we go into our photo shooting menu here, come down to ISO sensitivity settings, and we click OK on there. Now, as much as we want it automatic, we also want to say to the camera, we don't want to go over a certain ISO sensitivity that is too high, so we don't want to get too much noise in the photo. So that maximum ISO sensitivity that you set your camera at is going to be something that you're comfortable editing. So I'm happy with ISO 8000. I know that I can work with and manage any noise at that level, so I'm quite happy for the camera to go up to ISO 8000 in terms of noise. Now, different editing software has different magic and special sources in it that will handle noise in any number of ways. So that maximum sensitivity is basically, you're going to set that where you feel comfortable at having noise in your photos and at that level. So you're going to set your camera up exactly the same as what I've done here. So you're turning your ISO sensitivity on and your maximum sensitivity to, in my case, 8000. Some may want to go beyond that, some may want to be lower than that. It's just what you feel comfortable with. And this ISO sensitivity will do the heavy lifting for you and the bulk of the grunt work on the panic button setup. Now, the minimum shutter speed here, that can be set to auto as well. It's not necessary there. So once I've got that done, I save that, and I'm pretty happy then to go into manual mode and start putting in the other settings that help complete this panic button. Now, once I do that in manual mode, I will then save it into the custom settings menu, and I always put it into custom setting free. Okay, so we're now in manual mode, and it's basically just a case of dialing in the shutter speed that you want. So using your command dial on the back here, and I like about 1/3200th of a second for birds in flight, because I don't know how close they're going to be to me, and I don't know how far away they're going to be from me. So if they're close, you obviously want a faster shutter speed. You could go up to 1/4000th, but again, that's preference. I think 1/3200th of a second
is a pretty good starting point. Keep in mind that when you're shooting these, you're going to be out in pretty reasonable light anyway. This isn't going to work super well in dark and shady areas because the ISO sensitivity is going to want to go a lot higher in those darker areas at these particular shutter speeds. So there we go. We got 1/3200th of a second. Now aperture, I like to run this wide open on my lenses. I don't notice on this telephoto too much difference between f8 and f6.3 at the 600mm end of this. So I'm happy to run this lens wide open, which collects the most amount of light and again helps to manage that ISO. So again, 1/3200th of a second, and get your aperture wide open. Set this up in manual mode, and then you want to start looking at a couple of other areas that I'll go to now. Alright, so this next setting, as part of our panic button, we want our focus mode to be in autofocus continuous. So you're going to have the bird moving, it may get closer, it may get further away, so you want your autofocus to be constantly working to adjust for the distance that the bird is from you. So that's the next setting that you're going to put in, continuous autofocus. Alright, so the next section that we're going to put into this panic button is we want our autofocus area mode selected, and we want this on whatever camera you're using to be as wide and as large as possible, so that there's every chance that your bird is going to fall into the autofocus area. So on this, I set this up to be wide area autofocus. So I've got a nice big autofocus area for you to put over that bird, and hopefully the camera is going to be able to lock onto that bird and get it into focus. Alright, now once you've got your shutter speed set, your aperture set, your ISO set to automatic with the maximum ISO set at the speed that you're comfortable with, then you've set your autofocus mode onto continuous and your autofocus area as big as possible. You then want to save that. So all you're doing, you're coming into menu and you're going down to setup menu. You're tabbing across then to save user settings, and you're going to save it into U3. Hit OK on that, and then all you're doing, save settings. Now, why do you want it in U3 and not U1 or U2? Remember that this is a panic button, and you want it to be as easy to do this as possible. Now, most times, most photographers are going to be shooting in manual mode. User free is one click away from manual mode. So all you're doing then is you're turning it clockwise one click, and you know then that you're in a full mode where you can capture a bird in flight as best as possible with a panic button. That's why I save it into U3, not U1 or U2, because I don't want to be going, oh, how many clicks was it? Did I go 1 or 2? I just want to be in manual mode. I come out, I see a bird, wow, click into user free, snap, 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 and away I go. Hopefully I've captured that bird. So that's why I want to save it into U3, and that's going to be the easiest way to work with this panic button.
Alright, well there you go. We've gone over how we can set up the Nikon Z series of cameras to do a panic button to help us hopefully capture more birds in flight. If you found this video helpful, it'd be great if you could give me a thumbs up. Even better, hit the subscribe button. You won't miss any of my latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.